Wins are hard to come by in Formula One. To date, there have been 1,125 F1 Grand Prix, in which just 115 drivers have claimed victory. Crossing that line first is a mighty task, and sometimes even that isn't enough to claim the silverware, as has happened 11 times in the history of the sport. The 2024 season turned out to be one of the most open in modern times. 7 different drivers won Grand Prix, and all of them did it more than once. At the Belgian Grand Prix, with the summer break looming, Mercedes were keen to keep their momentum going, having recently won in Austria and Great Britain. Lewis Hamilton took the lead at Spa-Francorchamps early on and looked comfortable against the Ferraris and McLarens with his two-stop strategy.
Think we'll have a one-stop.
George Russell felt he needed to gamble and told his team to consider the one-stopper. They did just that, and once the pit stop shuffle had sorted itself out, he found himself in front, but on some very old rubber. By the final tours, Hamilton had narrowed the gap to within DRS range, but some fine defensive driving from Russell saw him lead his teammate home for a Mercedes 1-2.
It'll be a Grand Prix claimed inexplicably with driving brilliance from the wheel of George Russell, who takes one of the greatest drives you will ever witness to the top step of the podium. George Russell wins the Belgian Grand Prix.
Yes! Woohoo!
Tire whisperer.
Tire whisperer.
However, after much celebration and plenty of champagne sprayed around, Russell was disqualified post-race. His car found to be 1.5 kilograms below the minimum weight required. Lewis was promoted to first, his 105th Grand Prix victory. At the 1976 British Grand Prix, another winner was disqualified after the race, but it took months to sort out. A mass pile-up at the start saw several cars severely damaged, among them the McLaren of James Hunt. There was so much debris the race had to be stopped. For a while, the stewards were not going to allow those who had failed to complete the first lap to take the restart. However, under much pressure from the locals, they relented, and Hunt was permitted to restart in his repaired McLaren. Niki Lauda led the restart and kept Hunt behind for 45 laps, until gearshift problems allowed the Briton to take the lead. Hunt crossed the line for what everyone thought was a wonderful home victory. However, several teams protested to the FIA. 2 months later, Hunt was stripped of the win. Lauda took the honours and the points. The 1978 Italian Grand Prix is remembered for a terrible accident at the start, which saw Ronnie Peterson tragically pass away. Mario Andretti was the drivers' championship leader at the time, and Peterson was the only other man who could have conceivably caught the American. So Andretti was the champion before the race restarted, but no one felt like celebrating. They eventually got underway, Gilles Villeneuve getting the jump on Andretti as they rolled up to the start line, something both drivers would later lament. The American eventually got past his Canadian counterpart and was first to the checkered flag. However, the stewards deemed both Andretti and Villeneuve had jumped the start and were each given a 1-minute time penalty. Niki Lauda became the official winner, but he gave the trophy to Andretti. The final 3 laps of the 2008 Belgian Grand Prix were chaotic, dramatic, and not without consequence. Ferrari's Kimi Raikkonen had led for most of the race, having jumped from 4th to 1st in the opening lap and a half. But at the end of lap 42, with the rain starting to fall, the chasing Briton made a move.
Now Hamilton is right up behind Raikkonen and goes for it down the outside of the bus stop. Raikkonen's not giving anything away. They almost touch, they do touch. Hamilton will have to give the corner back. They're side by side. He'll have to have a go at him at last source. Okay, now Raikkonen's back in front and Hamilton's going to attack him. He goes on the inside. Raikkonen tried to play it cool, but it went wrong for him. Hamilton's through. They touch again. Amazing action here at Spa-Francorchamps. But Lewis Hamilton is back in the lead with 2 laps to go.
All seemed above board, and the two continued their fight in the drizzle.
Well, Hamilton's off. Raikkonen gets back past him again. There's a Williams in the mix too. Hamilton's on the grass.
So Raikkonen back,
Raikkonen
spins. They'll have to stop for intermediates. It's the only thing they can do now.
Well, in these conditions, anything could happen as Hamilton again struggles to keep it on the road.
Oh, Raikkonen's going to hit the wall from there.
He's going to hit the wall. He has hit the wall. That's Raikkonen. And he's in the wall and out of this Grand Prix, having led it for most of the race. and Hamilton can take it easy now.
With Raikkonen out of the race, Hamilton then used all of his skill to keep the McLaren on track, ahead of his title rival Felipe Massa, the British driver claiming a 5th victory of the season. However, post-race he was deemed to have gained an advantage by cutting the chicane during his earlier battle with the Iceman, and the subsequent 25-second penalty relegated him to 3rd place. Massa was awarded the win, and the Brazilian closed the gap in the Drivers' Championship to just 2 points.
What's happened is that he took an advantage by cutting the chicane. Otherwise, you can ask drivers how many overtakes you see there. No overtaking. Going from the last corner to the first corner is so small, straight. So he took an advantage. That's clear. And that's my opinion. So it doesn't change.
One sense, I'm not bothered because I know the rules and I was clear to stay by the rules and make sure that in a situation where I thought it was a bit unfair going into turn 18 on the exit, forced wide, I enabled him back pass and I overtook him again. In doing that, I think I was fair, and so I don't have a worry in that sense. But knowing the business, then it is a bit of a worry. But what can you do?
Michael Schumacher dominated at the start of the 1994 season, winning 7 of the first 10 races. Up next was the Belgian Grand Prix, the circuit where the German had bagged his maiden win just 2 years previously. Having qualified P2 after 2 rain-affected qualifying sessions, the Benetton driver soon took to the front, building up a sizable lead over Rubens Barrichello. A rare error from Schumacher, though, saw him pirouette 360 degrees at Pouhon, allowing his rivals to close up slightly, including title rival Damon Hill, who soon found himself running second on the road. But Schumacher was still able to cross the line comfortably for what he thought was another win at Spa. However, even while he celebrated on the podium, his Benetton was being examined, and the plank on the underside was deemed to have excessive wear. He was subsequently disqualified. Everyone moved up a place, and Hill was awarded his 3rd victory of the year so far. The 1982 season was a year of technological change. At the second race of the year in Brazil, it was thought the turbos would have the edge, and indeed Alain Prost put his Renault on pole, with Ferrari's Gilles Villeneuve close behind. But some of the cars using the normally aspirated Ford Cosworth engines, Brabham and Williams amongst them, had a trick up their sleeve. They were fitted with a water tank to ostensibly cool the brakes, which would slowly empty throughout the Grand Prix, making the cars lighter as the race unfolded, only to be topped up post-race before the final weigh-in. Brabham driver and home hero Nelson Piquet fought a race-long battle with the Williams of Keke Rosberg, as both drivers chased leader Villeneuve, who eventually crumpled under the pressure and found the fence. An exhausted Piquet crossed the line first, to ecstatic celebrations from the Brazilian fans. Collapsing on the podium from the effort, both he and Rosberg were unaware that Ferrari and Renault were protesting the result. It wasn't until after the next race in Long Beach the case would be resolved. Piquet and Rosberg were disqualified, and Alain Prost became the official winner. Going forward, cars would now be weighed post-race in which they finished. The water tank innovation had had its day. The 1985 San Marino Grand Prix was notable for a slew of DNFs, many due to a fuel allowance limit imposed by the regulators. Pole sitter Ayrton Senna, leading the race at Imola, started running low with 3 laps to go, and what had looked like an easy victory slipped from his grasp as his Lotus ground to a halt. Ferrari's Stefan Johansson took the lead, but he also fell foul of the fuel allocation, an electrical fault blamed for giving him a false reading. A string of other drivers went the same way. Nelson Piquet, Nigel Mansell and Martin Brundle all unable to finish due to a lack of petrol. The final lap, and Thierry Boutsen's arrows rolled to a stop on the start-finish straight. The Belgian eventually forced to push his car over the line. Alain Prost brought his McLaren home first, just, the professor running out of juice on the cooldown lap. However, post-race scrutineering revealed Prost's car to be underweight, and he was disqualified. Senna's Lotus teammate Elio De Angelis was consequently awarded his 2nd career victory. Like Spa, Montreal seems to have had more than the average quota of result reversals. Back in 2019, the Mercedes pairing of Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas had dominated the early races, and Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel, despite several podiums, was already more than 50 points adrift. In Canada though, the German took pole by more than 2/10 over Lewis Hamilton and was in command from the off, keeping the lead throughout the opening exchanges. In the second half of the race, he came under more pressure from the chasing Hamilton.
Oh, he's gone wide.
Sebastian Vettel goes wide and Lewis Hamilton thought there was a gap, but the wall and Sebastian Vettel moving to the right-hand side closed that gap down.
They didn't do anything wrong. The back just would not live with the front there.
Hamilton thought there was a gap there and he was going for it down the right-hand side of that Ferrari, but it disappeared very, very quickly indeed.
That was only ever going to be a wedge.
Yeah. Was that dangerous by Sebastian Vettel? Hamilton really had to jam on the brakes, didn't he?
The stewards took a dim view of Vettel's actions, issuing a 5-second penalty for an unsafe release and forcing another driver off the track. All Hamilton needed to do was stay within 5 seconds of the leader and he'd secure his 5th win of the season, which he did.
Sebastian Vettel takes the checkered flag, but Lewis Hamilton wins the Canadian Grand Prix.
That is not the way naturally I wanted to win, but I would have been past it if it wasn't for the wall there. So, big thank you.
To say Vettel disagreed with the decision is a bit of an understatement.
Oh, no, guys. No. Not like that. Not like that. Oh, no.
Sebastian Vettel taking the number 2 from where his car should be, putting it in front of Lewis Hamilton's car, and then putting the number 1 in the blank space where his car should be. He thinks he's number 1 today and should be number 1. And I tell you what, over 305,000 people came to Montreal this weekend. Not any of those are going to persuade him he's wrong.
Another way in which Montreal is similar to Spa is the way the weather often affects the outcome. In the 1990 Canadian Grand Prix, with a damp track ahead of them, everyone started on the wets. Ayrton Senna was on pole, with McLaren teammate Gerhard Berger beside him. Senna got a great start, but Berger clearly jumped it, a move that would have consequences later when the Austrian was handed a 1-minute penalty. Senna had allowed Berger to pass him, hoping his teammate could build a reasonable lead to help cut the penalty deficit. But the pressure from the drivers behind meant that Senna couldn't back up the opposition quite enough. Berger took the checkered flag but would ultimately finish 4th, behind Senna, Piquet and Nigel Mansell. The penultimate race on the calendar in 1980 was the Canadian Grand Prix. It would be a title decider between Brabham's Nelson Piquet and Alan Jones of Williams. The two contenders touched at the start, causing a huge pile-up. The race was stopped whilst the resultant mess was cleared away. Piquet was forced to take the spare Brabham, which had a Cosworth engine that was only set up for qualifying. Although clearly the faster man, his car soon gave up the ghost. Jones was chasing down race leader Didier Pironi, who had a time penalty looming over him, having jumped the start. Despite crossing the line first, the Frenchman's penalty meant that Jones took the win and secured the driver's crown into the bargain. Although not as dominant as they had been the previous year, McLaren was still a class apart in 1989. Their two drivers were way out in front in the title fight, but Alain Prost was well ahead of Ayrton Senna, who'd failed to finish in 5 of the previous 14 Grand Prix. In order to overhaul the Frenchman, the reigning world champion needed to win this race and the final one in Adelaide. The Brazilian took pole with an astounding lap, 1.7 seconds faster than Prost. But as the lights went out, it was the professor giving the lessons. He shot to the front, dominating the first half of the race. Senna needed an edge. Freshly shod, the Brazilian used his new tyres to perfection and hunted down his teammate. But then, on lap 46, the two would dramatically come together.
This is the opportunity that Senna's looking for, and he's going through. Ouch! Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. They beat. This is what we were fearing might happen during the race. And that means to say that Prost has won the World Championship.
However, with a little help from the marshals, Senna got going again, continuing his charge, passing Alessandro Nannini for the lead. He crossed the line for what he thought was his 7th win of the season. But then the drama really began. Senna was disqualified post-race for missing the chicane when re-entering the track. The Grand Prix win went to Nannini, and Prost secured the driver's title.
To be very honest, I was absolutely sure that I'm going to win the race or an accident like this, because I knew that he wanted to win absolutely. And the problem with Ayrton, he can't accept that. He can't accept not to win, and he can't accept that somebody resists by an overtaking maneuver. And a lot of times, if you remember last year and this year, I opened the door, and if I did not open the door, we would have crashed like this. And I said before the race, if that happened, I don't open the door anymore.
I refuse to walk away from the fight. It's my nature to go right to the end, and that's what I'm going to do.